Hello there, people of the internet. Today is probably going to get some spicy attention from our elderly viewers who have very strong bias opinions towards one cartridge or the other. But I have been thinking about doing this video for a little while now, and I want to go ahead and talk about, 30-06 versus 7.62 NATO. So whenever we talk about 30-06, 7.62 NATO, there's a bunch of different speculations and branches that we're going to go in. First off, I say that we go into the history behind these two cartridges. Did you know that 30-06 is not the first iteration of this style of cartridge? 30-06 actually branches from the 30-03 cartridge, which was basically the same cartridge but with a larger round nose bullet. Whenever the development of the 30-06 cartridge was coming about, large round nose bullets were very typical of that time period. However, also typical of that time period was the idea that more pointed Spitzer-style cartridges, more pointed Spitzer-style bullets, more pointed Spitzer-style projectiles, whatever it is that you feel like calling those. Basically bullets that have a pointed tip on them. Those were better at long-range engagements. They were lighter weight bullets that had better trajectory, and they simply cut through air better, so they were affected by air a lot less. So the 30-03 was replaced by the 30-06, and that is the 30-06 that we all know and love today. The 30-06, the development of the M2 ball round was a 150 grain bullet traveling at about 2,700 or so feet per second. Not quite as potent and powerful as commercial ammo 30-06 to this day, but we'll talk more on that here in a second. The 30-03 round actually branched off from the 7mm Mauser round, which is a round that the United States looked at after they used their 30-40 Krag cartridge up against the 7mm Mauser round, and the Mauser with the 7mm Mauser just completely annihilated U.S. soldiers and U.S. forces armed with the 30-40 Krag rifle chambered in 30-40 Krag. It was definitely not a battle in favor of the U.S. However, it led us to the adoption of the 1903 Springfield. That was Kevin, by the way. Kevin's my peacock. I got 4 of them. They're all named Kevin. But that led to the adoption of the 1903 Springfield, the 1903 cartridge, or the 30-03 cartridge. And that's eventually developed into the 30-06. Now, the 30-06 was used for a long time in American forces, and it was used in a variety of different firearms: the 1903, 1906, 1917, the M1 Garand or Garand, the BAR rifle, the Browning rifles, the automatics, and the 1919 Browning machine guns, and there was just a tremendous amount of U.S. service rifles chambered in 30-06. It became a very ubiquitous cartridge. Now, one of the main issues with soldiers that were using 30-06 is they could not do anything stealthily. Any soldier that was a soldier during the time period of U.S. development where 30-06 was a standard cartridge, you literally could not do anything stealthy at all. Anytime a soldier during that time period tried doing anything stealthy, the sound of his balls clanking together as he ran at the enemy just completely gave him away. So no way anyone could ever do anything stealthy during that time period where they were using 30-06 to absolutely go to work. So anyway, back to the serious conversation here. 30-06 was eventually replaced in U.S. forces by the 7.62 NATO for a good number of reasons. After World War II, it was seen that intermediate cartridges were very much going to be the way of the future. You know, lighter weight ammunition, you could hold more ammunition per person, per pound. It was just the better overall solution, so eventually that is what everyone decided to go to, especially after the Second World War. After the Second World War, all of the countries that were on the pro side of the world, for the most part, all of these countries got together and they were like, okay, if anything ever happens, I'm talking in layman's terms here, they were like, okay, if anything ever happens, we need, logistically speaking, one universal cartridge that we can all go to for better or for worse. Eventually 7.62 NATO was adopted by all of these countries, and that's just what it is that was being used. 7.62 NATO is a mimic cartridge of 308, and it also mimics the ballistic capabilities of the M2 ball ammunition. if we're talking M80 ball 7.62 NATO. M2 ball 30-06 was that 150 grain projectile traveling at about 2,800, 2,700 feet per second, depending on the platform, barrel length, gas systems, etc., etc. And M80 ball, the 7.62 NATO round, was designed to mimic that same bullet traveling at that same velocity. There's actually a lot of speculation as to whether or not 308 or 7.62 NATO is an intermediate cartridge because it's a smaller version of 30-06, or full power rifle cartridge because it did the same thing that the M2 30-06 actually did. So I will let you guys argue about that in the comments below. There's people who agree or disagree on one side or the other of the platform. So both of these cartridges do basically the same exact thing. They launch the same projectile at the same velocity. The only difference is the 7.62 NATO was significantly shorter than the 30-06. We got 30-06, 7.62 NATO. It was because of new developments in gunpowder that we were able to bump the velocities of the 150 grain projectile out of a shorter case up to the same velocities that you would get out of a much longer case. That being said, as far as military loadings go, that's all fine and dandy, but 7.62 NATO / 308 and 30-06 has become a dramatically ubiquitous cartridge in the commercial community as well. And for the most part, if we're talking about 30-06, you're going to see significantly higher pressures than 7.62 NATO, and you're going to see bullets that are traveling faster than 7.62 NATO. That's just the way of modern technology and modern advancements with these gunpowders. We are able to push this faster than the actual specification of the original M2 ball round, which was already diminished to begin with. So we're going to go ahead and jump right back into that topic. The M2 ball round was already diminished to begin with. 30-06 as a commercial loading pushes projectiles significantly faster. I know a commercial 30-06 will push that same 150 grain bullet at around 3,100 or so feet per second, potentially even faster. So in terms of the actual capabilities of the cartridge, unless we're talking about significant amounts of power, just due to modern burning powders, modern burn rates, modern lockup systems inside of modern platforms, we are able to get 7.62 NATO basically on par with 30-06 unless we start talking about significant amounts of power behind the projectiles. Once you start bumping up bullet weights and bumping up bullet velocities to any real significant amount beyond just the military standard loadout, you start to really see some differences between these two projectiles. Like for example, 30-06, I have seen with my own eyes chronographed a 220 grain bullet travel at about 3,500 feet per second, which is an absolutely insane speed for a rifle cartridge for a bullet size of that weight. And that is a tremendous amount of power being put downrange by the 30-06. That's the fastest, heaviest bullet I've ever seen from a 30-06, and I don't know if there's any faster. I know there's heavier bullets. I've seen all the way up to a 260 grain bullet, but I do not know how fast that bullet travels from a 30-06. I do not know the fastest projectile that I've seen traveling out of a 308. I don't really delve all that much into commercial loads for 308 simply because I'm a military surplus guy, and a lot of what I do is old military surplus rifles chambered in 7.62, technically 7.62 set me in this particular case, but I fire 7.62 NATO cartridges out of these, and I am also a small-time gun channel, and 7.62 NATO is a lot cheaper to buy in surplus than commercial 308 loadings. But I do know that I have seen 220 grain projectiles loaded into 308 cases, and I'm sure they fire, but I'm very doubtful that you'll be able to push those up to 3,500 feet per second. In terms of the higher end forces of the cartridges, 30-06, just because it is a larger case and can fit more kinds of, or more amounts of powder inside of that case and push really heavy bullets really, really quickly. I mean, it's simply just a larger case. If we're talking commercial loadings, if you want some significant amounts of power, 30-06 will absolutely outbeat 7.62 NATO or 308 every single day of the week. However, with that same argument, there are very, very few things on the planet that you would need a tremendous amount of power to be able to take down. For the most part, especially with proper shot placement, 7.62 NATO/308, especially if you're using your heavier weight projectiles, that will be able to handle basically all of the jobs that you would need to handle. Not only that, but this right here, 308 commercial ammunition, tends to be significantly less expensive than 30-06 commercial ammunition, especially nowadays. This is 2023, mid-2023. At time of recording this, I don't know how things are going to play off in the future. Maybe this video will be completely null and void by that time period. But as of right now, 308 is way cheaper than 30-06. And for the most part, unless you're rocking significant amounts of power behind your cartridge, they're going to be fairly similar in their capabilities. They're going to be fairly similar in terms of the actual loadings that they're using. The only difference is, 7.62 NATO/308, far cheaper and far shorter, far lighter. I know that I myself can carry much more 7.62 NATO ammunition than I can with 30-06. I'm a gun tuber. I move around a lot of ammo. Ask me how I know that. So unless you need this obscene amount of power behind your cartridges, I mean, if you do, then yeah, 30-06 would be a very good ubiquitous way to be able to get those levels of power. But if you're an average Joe like me, and you're in a place like Florida where, the average deer gets to be like 150 pounds, then, I mean, if you're just going to take it deer hunting, then you don't need this massively overpowered, obscene cartridge. Of course, if you are in, I don't know, Africa, I know that 30-06 was used very successfully in some places in Africa. If you use heavier bullets that are traveling quite fast, then you can achieve some pretty incredible things. So these right here, I believe, are 150 grain projectiles. They're soft points. I got these from a bag. I don't believe that they're reloads. They might be reloads, though. But I don't believe that they are. We got ourselves what appears to be a factory crimp on them and still sealed primers, so that definitely tells me that these are probably not reloads. But I'm assuming they're 150 grain projectiles. I have not actually pulled or weighed them, but we're going to go ahead and send a couple of these downrange at our car, because why not? I have a couple of cows down that way, so I'm just going to kind of send these into the car so we don't risk hitting a cow, as opposed to hitting our steel and having spalling and shrapnel and all that other stuff go everywhere. Oh boy. Well, whether they are reloads or not, they did fire. So this is actually Winchester, so this is reloadable brass. No signs of overpressure or anything, so I'm assuming that these are factory loads. Let's send another round. I'm just hitting the front rim of the car because it's a solid piece of metal and it's fun to hit. And these soft point 30-06 rounds, I'm sure, are just absolutely devastating that car. So I'm not sure how fast these are going to be traveling, but they're 150 grain commercial loads. So I would bet out of this, I believe this is a 24-inch barrel, 3,100 or so feet per second. Now I have my 7.62 NATO ammunition here, but these that I'm going to be using are hand loads done up by myself. These are 150 grain projectiles, but I have these projectiles undercharged. These are ones that I use for hunting, and the reason why I have these undercharged for hunting is because, like I said, the deer are quite small here in Florida. I don't like wasting meat, so I got these rated, they're going to be traveling at about the same effective velocity as about 30-30, so that is roughly what we're dealing with this right here. And the reason why I'm using this instead of 30-30 is because I like this rifle. But 7.62 NATO, and this is 7.62 NATO, and it's having some trouble with my extractor here. Long story short, this one has an extractor from another Mauser, and I kind of swapped them out, and this one's still not great. Long story short, downloaded 7.62 NATO because I don't want to completely destroy the meat on my deer. And this right here is not something that bounces around a whole lot because the velocity is significantly less. That's actually very nice to shoot. Alright, well, thanks for watching, folks. Hopefully you guys learned something. My camera's about to die. Oh boy. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share, description below, link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. I will see you guys on the next video. Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. The poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.